next word that comes out of your mouth better be some brilliant fucking Mark Twain shit, because it's definitely getting chiseled on your tombstone.
Tutti fucking 30. That's right, you guys are joining me for episode 30. Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. Y'all know I'm the SaWGuy, and yes, we're going to be talking about one of my other favorite slasher films, The Devil's Rejects. And what I love about this film is that not only is it a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses, but if you've never seen the film, you could basically watch this film and you'll understand the whole story. Rob Zombie did such a fucking amazing work on this, you know? And he still to this day doesn't get enough credit for the chops that he shows, you know? Everybody will say, like, Halloween was okay, Halloween 2, but I mean, honestly, he has the chops, and this film proves it. And it's one of my favorites. I would say it was one of the best horror films of the new millennium because it was released in July 22nd of 2005. And it came out 2 years after House of a Thousand Corpses. And a little quick backstory on House of a Thousand Corpses, if you've never seen it or heard of it. If you're a horror fan like me, you have, but to the general fans, I understand. With House of a Thousand Corpses, it was basically very animated, and it was more like cult-like, like Charles Manson-like, and it was very animated. You know, there were a lot of weird psychedelic scenes and stuff. This one, he made it like really grit for Devil's Rejects. He made it, I would say, because it's in the same period, it takes place about 7 months. I wrote it down. Because the first film takes place Halloween weekend, October 30th, 1977. Devil's Rejects takes place roughly 7 months on May 18th, 1978, right? So he still has it in the same time period, but he obviously made it a direct sequel, but went a different route with it, you know? And you don't see too many films that do that now, you know? They had more like a twist like the Jason or the Friday the 13th sequels. A little bit kind of like the sequels to Nightmare on Elm Street. It went like skewed off, but it all tied into the same tangent, you know what I mean? But anyways, as I said, this was released in 2005. That makes this film 13 years old. But you would never know it's 13 years old when you see it. Like, I mean, besides the actors and everything and how they are and stuff, but you would never know that this film was 13 years old. and it's a great fucking film. And I'm going to break it down for you like I always do in every one of my episodes. So this whole movie, if you've seen what happens in House of a Thousand Corpses, you basically figure out that Captain Spaulding, is he in with the family? Is he not in with the family? You find out the end, and then it says the end, and then question mark. And it left it open, and everyone's like, no, he's not going to do a sequel. Then he comes out two years later with a fucking sequel. So Devil's Rejects opens up. You see Tiny. He was the big guy who was in the first one. The actor, what was his name? Matthew McGorry. He's kind of like, he was a big guy, you know, he had kind of like the Andre the Giant thing, so he was like really tall and everything. So he fit the part really well, and I thought that was a cool nickname they gave him, Tiny. Well, anyways, the film starts off, he's dragging a dead body, and you see a bunch of cops like going around, and then he takes off his mask. You know, he's wearing a hood. Then all of a sudden you see all the cops around the house. You see Baby, you see Otis, you see Mama Firefly. It showed a little bit of Rufus. And, you know, the thing I want to talk about with those actors is that, another catchy thing, they replaced the original Mama Firefly because, what's her name? Karen Black. She wanted to come back for the second one, but she wanted more money. Obviously, it wasn't in the budget, so they got Leslie Esterbrook. Same thing, I think, with Robert Mukes is that, I don't know what happened with that situation, but they ended up replacing his character, the brother, Rufus, and they replaced him with Tyler Mane, who's actually Michael Myers, or he's also played, you know, Sabretooth and a bunch of other roles. But anyways, the cops roll up, they tell him, hey, you need to get out of here peacefully, otherwise we're going to open fire, and then basically they're like, oh shit, you know, the cops got us. So it basically, they geared up, got their gear. The police, they already said, okay, they're not coming out, so we're going to fucking shoot. And, you know, then it builds up, the music, and then 1, 2, 3, then you have this big-ass shootout scene. And it reminded me of, like, the old Western films, which was pretty cool. And what I loved about Rob Zombie, he's very good about maintaining, like, the time frame. Everything from, like, the handguns, they were all either 1911s or revolvers. The rifles, they were either bolt-action or shotguns. A couple of them, they had ARs, because, I mean, you know, the 70s, they had came out to the public because of the Vietnam War and stuff. But also, too, if you look at the cars and everything, the time period, the way they're dressed, he blended it all in, and it looked fucking amazing. But anyways, they have this whole shootout scene. They stop for a second. The sheriff's like, wait, hold on a second. Get some tear gas in there. They get tear gas. They go in, and then, you know, that's when they're all hiding, and then they come out, they start shooting. Rufus gets killed because, I mean, all of them are ganging up on him. Otis and Baby, they run out to the cellar, and they had a little back door where they get out, right? Mama Firefly, she goes and sees, like, her son all freaked, like, kind of distraught. I wouldn't say freaked out that her son was killed. And then it shows the beginning of the iconic scene where she pulls a gun, and then she's like, I'm sorry, Sheriff, but you ain't getting me. And the gun's empty, and he's like, you ain't getting off that easy. Huh, bitch. And then all of a sudden it starts the great soundtrack of the Allman Brothers. And I was just like, oh shit, you know, the Midnight Riders. And while this whole, you know, song is going, typical Rob Zombie fashion, he does his intro, and it's amazing, you know. It shows them trying to escape. They escape, and they're running around in the field. They, at the same time as that's going on, they're basically arresting Mama Firefly, putting her in the cop car. They show they kill an innocent victim, and they take the car, and they're driving away. Then it starts off with a whole story where it's like the cops are looking around. It shows a news reporter like, this is the most sadistic thing since Jack the Ripper was walking the streets. Then they figured out that and they were looking through the books, and they shows a picture of Captain Spaulding, like, torturing a girl. Well, not really torturing, like, he was, like, behind her as she's, like, crying, like this, and he's laughing, and then the sheriff was like, ah, fuck, I knew that motherfucker was involved. And then, he said his name's Captain Spaulding. Then it goes into Captain Spaulding, what's he doing? I'm laughing at it because it shows that there's, like, a sex scene, and then, you find out that it's later a dream sequence where it's kind of crazy, where he basically calls her a whore and all that, and he wakes up and he's with the girl who's not as attractive as the girl that was in his dream, and then he was just basically getting up, getting ready. They're going to show his commercial, and he's like, I paid good money for this shit, and then the news comes on, Baby calls him and tells him, hey, the pig's house, you need to get the hell out, they're going to be looking for you. So he gets all ready and everything, runs out of his truck, has kind of like a little scuffle with his lady, you know, Poopy, don't go, woman, leave me alone. Great acting by Sid Haig, you know. That's another thing I'll touch on later in this episode is the acting. So as that's going on, then it shows Baby and Otis, they're driving to the Kiki motel where they actually had everything planned in case if the cops ever came and got them. They see, you know, this innocent group, and their group was known as Banjo and Sullivan. They were kind of like a best friends group, and they would go and tour and play music and stuff like that. And, you know, it gives a little bit of backstory with them. Then Roy, you know, he goes and gets his own. He goes and gets ice because his wife, who's played by Priscilla Barnes, her name's Gloria. She says, you know, give me some ice. I need a cold drink. And he goes and gets ice, and that's when he meets Baby. And Baby, what I like about her is that it's played by Sherry Moon Zombie. She uses her sex appeal to lure him in. Then he was like, okay. And then she's like, or my brother's going to have to kick your fucking teeth in. Or shoot your fucking teeth in. Then, you know, that's when they do the whole takeover and everything. Pull the other chick out of the shower. And I laugh at it because, you know, they're arguing at the same time while they're pointing the guns and shit. And then they're like, damn, look at that, like, jacket. And it was a rodeo jacket. Because it was all time period. You got to remember. They based it out all in the year of 1978. And when they did that, it showed that they had, I forgot his name, but he was a comedian. But he's one of those, he was knocking on the door. He's like, hey, open up. I got that beef jerky. They pull him in. They shoot him. And, you know, they set the example. And while that's going on, then it shows that the sheriff, he's talking to Mama Firefly. Like, hey, you're going to tell me where they're at. They're a bunch of ghosts waiting to expire. Then she basically pisses him off because then she shows, like, the dead pictures of his brother. And that's what I loved about this. There's so many connections to the first film. His brother was the other Wydell brother who went over there in House with a Thousand Corpses, and Mama Firefly kills him. He doesn't know that. He thinks his brother's missing. And then he finds out from Mama Firefly, and then that's when he starts choking her and says, I'm going to get every one of you, going to make all of you suffer. Then she goes crazy. Then it shows the scene where, you know, Otis, he tells the guys, hey, we're going to go in the van, we're going to go dig up some weapons that I found. That he buried in case if something happened. He goes over there, they try to attack him, you know, he shoots one of the guys in the neck, you know, and then he beats the shit out of Roy, the old guy, and basically says, you know, I was going to take it easy on you guys, but look at you now. You know, you're not no fucking hero. Lines like that, you know. I don't want to repeat it because it was really brutal. And obviously because of YouTube and all their banning issues and things like that. So I got to tone it down a little bit, okay? So as that's going on, you know, he kills both of them. And then it fast forwards into, like, where the girls are doing, you know? And basically the girl's like, hey, let me go to the bathroom. I'm going to piss myself. She's like, I don't care what you're going to do, you know? So a little bit of scuffle here and there where she's like, okay, well, you got to do me something in return. Sends her to the bathroom, and then baby gets up. Priscilla Barnes grabs the gun and says, wait a minute. If you don't stop, I'm going to shoot you. Throws her freaking knife right at her. You know, gets her in the chest, and then she's like, you know, I'm trying to remember the whole scene in my head, picture for picture. And then it shows where she's like, she has the gun, and she's like, go ahead, shoot me right in the fucking ass. You know, she slaps her ass, and then the gun's empty. And this is the thing that made this film just so good, was the fact that, you know, they said this line. Baby said this line. She goes, stupid B, bitch. There's no bullets in this gun. It's all mind power. And that blew me away because this whole movie, it basically told me that this movie had nothing to do with gore. It had to do with the fact that it's a psychological horror film. And with psychological horror films, they're always that much better. I mean, just like, whoa, mind blown. Holy shit, that was great. Then it shows that the girl, she runs out of the bathroom. Captain Spaulding finally gets there. He knocks her out. But before he gets there, he calls up his brother Charlie and basically says, hey, Charlie, there's a meltdown. I need to come over here. And Charlie's like, I don't think you should come. Then he's like, I'm coming over now. And before they showed, you know, that whole conversation, it talks about Charlie a little bit, how he has Michael Berryman. He's playing Cleavon. And he has, he's basically a pimp. And, you know, he was yelling at one of his chicks and was basically saying, you know, what the hell, this is, you know, what is this, buddy, you know? And then what I thought was kind of cool, though, too, is that they played off on Star Wars because it's all time period. And she basically said, well, if I dressed up as Princess Leia, maybe I can hook more of a man. Then he's like, that's what I don't need right now. You bring some sick bitches out here. The last thing I need is a bunch of people trying to be horny robots. Then, it was funny because fucking Michael Berryman's like, boss, they call him droids. I mean, there was a lot of dark humor in it. And to me, I like dark humor. As long as it ties into the theme, it's fucking amazing. So anyways, they're back at the hotel, they're waiting. Then Otis shows up and basically, you know, scares them and everything like that because he, you know, skinned the guy's face and was wearing it. And then they had this little scuffle where he's like, where the fuck were you? So they basically decide, okay, we're going to leave the chick here for the maid to clean up. So they pack all their shit and leave. Then it shows later on that the sheriff, he's basically piecing these things together, like all their nicknames. Like you actually learn the nickname of Captain Spaulding. His name's Cutter, you know? And they figured out that these are all their aliases, and they're all tied into the old Marx Brothers films that starred Groucho. And so, while that's going on, he calls in a movie expert to come in about, like, talk to him about Groucho films and shit like that, the character names and stuff. And then, you know, they show that whole scene, and then later on it shows that the maid, she goes in. I know, I'm losing breath because I'm explaining everything, I know. Can you tell I'm fucking excited for this episode? Well, anyways, the maid goes in there, she sees the chick, like, hanging on the door frame, and then the chick's running out with the, you know, skin mask face from her husband, gets hit by a freaking semi. And that's when, you know, the sheriff goes over there, Sheriff Wydell, and he's, you know, talking to the other sheriffs, and he's like, okay, well, does she know anything? Has she seen him? You know? And that's when you see the characters of Rondo and Billy Ray, who was Diamond Dallas Page and Danny Trejo, which they make a fucking amazing team. I hope Rob Zombie decides to do a movie with them because they made this movie too. But anyways, they were bounty hunters, you know, like old school bikers and shit. He called them and he says, hey, I got a list of names for you guys to run down. Crack them down and then get back to me. And then later on it shows that they're driving. And then it had that Tutti fucking Fruity scene where she's like, oh yeah, you know, I'm thinking I need ice cream in the next 10 miles. Because this whole movie shows that they're on the run from the cops. And the sheriff, he's going after him. And little by little, he's getting more crazy about it. Because he finally found out that they were the ones responsible for his brother's death, and he wanted vengeance. And this is like old school, like cowboy vigilante justice, right? So they get the ice cream, they meet up with Charlie. Charlie kind of dicks around with them. And, you know, the character of Charlie was really cool, you know. And they never explained much in the story how they were brothers. They just said that they were brothers and all that stuff. And it shows that they're partying, drinking, doing the drugs and shit. Then it shows, like, the sheriff, little by little, he's snapped. You know, he's talking to a mirror and everything. Then he finally, you know, goes to sleep. Well, no, he goes to sleep first, and then he dreams that his brother is there at the house, and he's like, I live here, but what I need you to do is kill those guys. Kill them, you know? And so that's what really makes him snap. And he basically says, okay, and then that's when he starts like, okay, I'm going to be a vigilante. He goes and talks to Mama Firefly, and then that's when he fucking guts her, and I was like, holy shit. Just puts a knife in, you know? Real quick, if you've never seen that, do realize that The Devil's Reject, there's two versions of the film. There's a rated and an unrated. And I'm going to be obviously I've been talking about the unrated version. I should have mentioned that. But anyways, if you haven't seen it, look up the unrated version. They always put it on Netflix, what was it, Hulu, you know, I think it's on Shudder right now, I think, currently. But anyways, so they show all that, and then they basically said, okay, the shit is on, so that basically meant that the sheriff gave the two shit kickers, like, the okay to go and pick them up, right? They're barbecuing and everything, and he's basically like, okay, well, you do realize that you got to keep that other asshole in line, because he was talking about Diamond Dallas Page, Billy Ray's character, or his character, Billy Ray. And they basically had a scuffle, because he's like, okay, don't be stupid, you know, make sure you take care of it. And then he's like, all right, Chief, we got it, you know. And, I mean, they really did pretty good on the time period of how they play their characters as badass bikers, bounty hunters, you know. And as that was going on, then basically, you know, it's early morning. One of my favorite scenes in this film. You see Charlie and Cleavon, they go and they drive up to this guy who has chickens. And, you know, he's talking to the guy with the chickens. And he's like, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'd like to get some chickens there. And then he's like, well, I got them long leg Rhode Island. Yeah, I'll take that. Then then that's when they had the whole chicken fucker scene, you know. What do you call me, a chicken fucker?
Are you saying that I would cut off a chicken's head, put my dick in it, fuck it, and go, ah?
And, yeah, that I don't want to go too in-depth on that, obviously, YouTube policy. But anyways, after that whole scene happened, then that's when the sheriff came up and said, hey, we're going to have a little powwow. And then he called him by his alias name, Wolf J. Flywheel, get your fucking pimp ass over here now. And then he basically tells him, look, you better make sure that they're there by midnight. I'm going to come pick them up. You fuck me over on this, it's done. I'm going to take you out and the other guy, right? So it goes back to the scene where they're all doing drugs and shit. And then little by little you see that the bikers, you know, Billy Ray and Rondo, they come in, they take out the girls, they beat the crap out of them. Well, not out of the girls, but they beat the crap out of Otis. They get Baby, and they, you know, basically he beats the shit out of Captain Spaulding. Then they throw him in the truck, and then it leads up to this whole climax scene where, you know, he locks him in the house, he tortures him little by little, and he basically tells him, okay, well, most are never going to come to the level that we're going to be playing on. So, and he basically shows him the victims, staples the pictures on him. I mean, just brutal shit, you know, shocking him with the cattle prod. Oh, man. Like, I'm just like, woo, that shit had to hurt, you know. Then with Baby, he basically, well, with Otis, he hammered nails in his hands, you know, kind of like a religious thing. He lets Baby go, and then he chases her down. Charlie feels bad, so he goes and tries to help her. And then I think it paid a lot of homage to The Shining, because it shows him running around with an axe, and then he chops him exactly the same. Like, he snaps and goes crazy. Baby starts to run. He shoots her in the leg. He beats the crap out of her. Then you see Tiny come up, picks him up, breaks his neck, and then she tells him, Tiny, hey, you know, Otis and Dad, they're in there, you know, because Captain Spaulding, he's the dad. Otis is his son, and then Baby is his daughter. Tiny goes in there, saves him. They get in the car, and then Tiny basically says that he's going to stay in the house. He goes in the house while the house is still burning and shit. Then it has, you know, the best ending for any horror film, or any film in general, you know. They're riding on the car, and the whole song of Freebird's coming. They're riding on the Freebird. They're playing Freebird as they're riding on through this highway. Then they stop, and then it shows that there's a barricade of cops, like with their guns drawn. And they basically have a couple guns, and they basically said, fuck it. So they're driving head on full speed at the cops, shooting. And it shows that they're getting shot all over. And then it ends. And, you know, that was a great fucking film, because the whole film, it was gritty. You had great acting. I know I get a comment every now and then, like, you say that in every fucking movie. No, honestly, this is true, because Rob Zombie, he basically, he has the chops. He really does, you know. He gets older actors, but at the same time, he uses those same actors in every film. I mean, it's kind of got like American Horror Story-like thing to it, you know, with how he uses the same actors and stuff. But they're great acting. They really are, you know. And he made it very gritty. He did the time period really good. And like I said, he put in the great actors that would do well on the role, you know. As I was researching for this, I kind of got a kick on a lot of the people that were in it, you know. The Sheriff Wydell, obviously that's played by William Forsythe, his deputy that was with him, that's actually Officer Doofy from Scary Movie. So I'm like, what? You know, and I'm looking it up, I'm like, no fucking way, they got Doofy in there, right? You got Danny Trejo playing as Rondo. You have, I didn't even talk about the part where PJ Souls was in it. You know, his Captain Spaulding's truck breaks down. He goes up to PJ Souls and he says, hey, I'm going to, you know, need to borrow your car for some important clown business here. And then she basically is like, what's that about clown business? And it shows that he just, like, knocks her out, takes over the car, and then the kid's crying. What, you don't like clowns? Aren't we fucking funny? Don't we make you laugh? I mean, it was brutal.
What's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns? Why? Don't we make you laugh? Aren't we fucking funny? You best come up with an answer, because I'm going to come back here and check on you and your mama. If you ain't got a reason why you hate clowns, I'm going to kill your whole fucking family. All right, now get your fucking ass out the car. Come on. Yeah. Shit.
You know, and me, to define the term brutal, it's, you know, he plays on many different elements and themes in this. He really does, you know. It has the cult-like family to it, kind of like Charles Manson. You know, they're all crazy in their own way and they're killers, but they all loved each other, which I thought was crazy. And the whole movie plays off the fact, like, okay, they're bad guys. Now you need to feel good for them because they're actually decent people when they're not crazy, you know. And it played on a lot of emotions on that. And then it's like, okay, now you need to hate the sheriff because the sheriff just kind of, you know, went bad and he started going on a vigilante justice, you know. But he, like, there's so much going on in this film that it's just, you have to watch it at least 2 or 3 times to kind of grasp a lot of things. And as I said before, I've always watched these movies so many freaking times when I do an episode on them, you know, like 6 or 7 times at least, writing everything down. But I thought it was cool though, because I mean, he has a lot of different actors in there. I was gonna say pimps. No, one of the prostitutes, one of the girls that was Charlie's girl, was played by E.G. Daly, or Elizabeth Daly. And what's funny is she's the voice of Tommy Pickles from the old cartoons, and she was Dottie from Pee Wee Herman. So, I mean, she was a big 80s star in herself, but she has great acting skills that kept her on, you know? You had Michael Berryman, who played Cleavon. Everybody knows Michael Berryman from The Hills Have Eyes. He was in Weird Science. Ken Fiore, he played Charlie, and he's known for Dawn of the Dead. What else? Whew. You had, like I said, Danny Trejo. Oh, Lou Temple, he played, you know, Adam Banjo, the guy who got his face skin. Everybody knows Lou Temple now because he played in The Walking Dead. And he also did, 31, the other Rob Zombie film. But, I mean, you see the pattern that Rob Zombie did is that he picks out great actors, and he picks actors that fit these roles really well. And he did an amazing job on it. He really did. I mean, even the time period and everything was on it. And you know what I noticed, though, about a lot of zombie films is that he, you know, tries to do it all in the 70s. And he basically came out and said, you know, the 70s were the best times of his life. So that's why, you know, he puts in little nods, you know. As for me, I really enjoy this film, and it's to the point, like, you can't knock on this film because, I mean, there's very little to knock on if you knock on it, you know, but you have action, you have, you know, psychological essence in it, you have the gore scene in it. A little quick tidbit, all the gore scenes, they're all done CGI, and I know Rob Zombie was pissed that most of it was all done by CGI. It's just because of time constraints. He wanted to make sure that this was going to be a great film, great acting. But, you know, that's why you don't see too many gory scenes in it. I mean, you'll see, like, props and stuff, but you won't see it, like, actually happening, except for, like, a few scenes, you know. But, you know, he did a great job, you know. And what's great about this, and I'm going to keep beating it down, is the fact that this was the sequel to House of a Thousand Corpse. And a lot of people didn't see House of a Thousand Corpse, like the normal viewer, but everybody saw Devil's Rejects. And the great thing about Devil's Rejects that everybody raved about it. It was so good that even Roger Ebert, he was this big-time, you know, critic. Some of you young folks don't know that, but he was this big-time critic, and he had his own TV show that he would give his critic, you know, reviews on all these films and stuff. It was before Facebook and all that, right? And he always knocked every horror film. He never gave any, like, good reviews on any horror film. I believe this is the only horror film that he actually said that it was, like, the best, you know, that he ever gave, like, a 5-star rating. That's why I was like, whoa, what the hell? I thought it was a typo. Like, we're talking about the same guy here that doesn't like horror movies and always bashes them, but he actually gave this film, like, a really good review because it was so damn good, you know? And as I said, too, it's just, they did this film so different compared to the original one. It's completely night and day. And I don't know what the reason was, why he did it that way. I think basically he wanted to branch out. Because if you see every zombie film, even the Halloween remake and Part 2 and Lords of Salem, he grows as a director, a writer, a producer, editor. He does most of the stuff by himself with, you know, people around him that help him and stuff. But, I mean, you can see, like, his work improving, and little by little he puts his own little twist on things. But he did an amazing job on this, you know. And what I like about this, too, is that the ending was so well thought out and perfect. How are you going to make a sequel to it? How are you going to make a third one, you know, tied into the series? But guess what? We're living in 2018. They're making a third one, which already is in, I think, editing process right now. But I know they finished wrapping up, like, filming all the main stuff. And they're calling the next one 3 from Hell, which is pretty cool, you know. Then the fact that they... I don't know how you're going to tie that in and do a sequel after that ending, you know. Supposedly, this is going to be more based on, like, how the Charles Manson trials and all that stuff went on. I don't know how they're going to play that out. I don't know how they're going to say that they lived in that. Maybe it was a dream sequence or something. I don't know. But this film was so great that, you know, a lot of people wanted more for Rob Zombie. And it was unfortunate because, you know, he never got around to do a third one because obviously the ending. And then he took his time and all of his efforts into the Halloween remake, which was great too, by the way. And after he did that one, then he did the Halloween 2. And his take on all that was good. But, you know, Devil's Rejects will always be his #1 film that he did. Because he himself has came out and said between Devil's Rejects and 31, Devil's Rejects was the hardest film to cut down. And the reason being is because, you know, this whole film, or how I broke it down to you, that was all the unrated version. And he basically, he filmed this whole movie. He got hella footage over everything. He's the type of person who would take, like, you know, behind-the-scenes pictures and somehow work them into, like, the film and make it, like, pop, you know? Because you see a couple of those. You see the old school, like, side swipes and everything like that. But what's cool about Rob Zombie is that he made so much footage. And he kept, you know, sending it out to the MPAA, the Motion Pictures Association, and they kept turning it down. They kept giving it an NC-17 rating, you know, because you got to remember, at this time in 2005, there wasn't a lot of horror films that did, like a lot of psychological. They weren't as gory. You have a few here and there, and you got to remember, I think the first Saw had just came out, like, all over, you know. So, and that was the movie that really pushed the boundaries for everybody that said, oh, okay, you know, you can put in a little bit more gore and shit. And then all these other films started to follow. But Devil's Rejects, he recorded so much footage, and a lot of it was just, it wasn't even the gore scene that they took out. I've seen the rated version, and I've seen the unrated version. And the rated version, they basically cut a lot of dialogue out. You know, there was a couple scenes where, you know, they were saying, like, he shows a picture, and when he's stapling on him, he basically says, oh yeah, she's not so doable now, you know. Then he was, and in the rated version, he doesn't say anything. But in the unrated, he gets, like, very vulgar with it, and then it shows that he staples it on him. You know, there's little tidbits here and there that you can pick up on it, because I've seen both versions, and I'm just like, whoa, this is two completely different movies. But, you know, it depends, because Rob Zombie, he likes to put a lot of brutal things. He likes to shock value you. And, you know, when I saw the other versions of, like, his other films that he's done, where he's done the rated and unrated, it's clear night and day difference. Like, whoa, I don't remember that scene in theaters. Holy shit, you know? Like, my eyes are, like, popping out when I see the difference between them, you know? Because it's clearly night and day. Just as much as they did from House of a Thousand Corpses to Devil's Rejects. But, anyways, hope you all enjoyed this episode on 2D fucking 30. I know I've been driving everybody crazy up the wall with that. But, I mean, Devil's Reject was one of my favorite films. It came out around after, you know, during the good times in my life. 2005, you know. A week after SaWGuY Day, you know. And it still, to this day, holds to me as one of my top favorite slasher films. And what I love about it is just you had everything all going on in this film. And before I end this episode, this was one of the few films that like, me and my father, we got along, because my dad, he's old school. He doesn't like horror films. He's more of an action kind of guy, right? And the first time I showed him this film, and we were watching it, you know, he was hooked. Like, right after that whole shootout scene in the beginning, and he got hooked. And this is actually a couple years back, where they were doing a horror convention. Me and my father went, and it was kind of cool. You know, we got the bond and everything, and, you know, he's not the horror movie type of guy, but when he came, the first person he wanted to meet was Captain Spaulding, you know, Sid Haig, and we met him. And I'll never forget that. That was a great moment, because Sid Haig, you know, he was really cool, and, you know, he talked to me, he talked to my dad.
Well, stutter, bitch.
It was a great bonding moment, you know? And I will always hold this film, Devil's Rejects, you know, dear to me, because it gave me that opportunity for it. So I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool, you know? Granted, it's a brutal film, but it's one of those things that it brought me closer, you know? And I'm always going to appreciate that film for that, you know? But I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you've seen the Devil's Rejects. If you're watching this video when 3 from Hell's already out, you're probably thinking, shit, I'm going to go see 3 from Hell, right? But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch y'all next time, as always, right?